Hello, everyone, and welcome to the July 9th legislative meeting of the town of Vegreville. Call this morning meeting to order at 3 o'clock. I'll be looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councilor Lemko makes the motion. Is there any additions or deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next up, we'll adopt the agenda of our the minutes of our last meeting. Councilor Bullock makes the motion. Any errors or omissions within those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. So, we are going to move to progress reports. We're going to start with Public Works with Dan Quigg. You're up.
Afternoon. We have a few updates at the Public Works. So I'm just going to run through a couple and then ask you if you have any questions after we go through them. First of all, we've obviously started street sweeping, pothole filling, crackle filling, line painting, alley maintenance. The calcium chloride has been applied on some alleys and streets on June 25th. Now sidewalk and curb repairs are underway, and we've also done a few paving patch jobs around town. Did you have any questions about any of that stuff?
I do believe that Councillor Riddick has a question regarding the stone workers.
I just had a quick question. So I've had it, there's a number of crews going out and doing work on concrete, and just wanted to clarify that anybody that's a subcontractor is required to follow the same rules as our own employees. Is that that's the case, right?
Like, are you talking like PPE and
Yeah.
all that? Yes.
Okay, so if anybody has any concerns, I'll just chat with you about that later. Yep. And the calcium chloride for the alleys, is that just to keep dust down, or?
Dust control, yeah, we do like this spray park alley there, just to keep the dust down in some roads, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, what she didn't say is that these guys are not wearing PP.
Was that the sidewalk for
Yeah.
the blocks down?
Yeah, they're just rocking around, runners, no glasses, no nothing going on, cutting stone and stuff.
Okay.
No sense having a meeting later. Everybody drives by and can see them, so.
Yeah, right downtown, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, keep moving, please, Dan.
Okay, as for the budgeted items, we got the concrete crushing done out at the landfill. It was slated for $160,000. We got 9,000 ton crushed out there, and it came in at $153,090. I don't know if you've been out there and seen, it's quite the pile.
And we have different sizes of that crush.
Nope.
All one size?
All one size. And then manhole refurbishing we did. It was budgeted for $40,000. We got 4 manholes refurbished for $38,869.
I think they're on CFR sand seal, right?
CFR.
Yeah.
In the wrong order.
There you go.
Okay. Yep, that was a $70,000 budget item, and it is on track for August 12th after the fair we scheduled it for, to do 58th Ave from Birch to 50th Street, then 48th Street from 43rd Ave to 41st Ave, and then also 47th Ave from Maple to 52nd Street.
Anybody have any questions on that? So just through the Dale, so we're coming up on a 4-year test now on this product?
Yeah, we've pretty much stopped testing. We're just rolling forward with it. The results are good, and we're extending our life of our roads. And remember, we're not hitting our pavement quality index as it would be best to do just because it's so expensive to overlay everywhere. So this is buying us some time and keeping the roads in reasonable shape.
Keep going, Dan.
What's the next one?
Next one is pave 47th Ave.
So paving 47th Ave, still in contact with B&W of when he can come and start that project, so it's on track. Hopefully he's back in town soon.
Refurbishing manholes.
And back to the refurbishment manholes, it was budgeted for $40,000, it came in at $38,869, and we got 4 of them done around town in various locations.
So if we were looking at a list, is it a fairly long list of
Ones that would need to be done?
Yeah.
Yes.
So if we plug at them 4 or 5 a year, we'll,
Yeah, or more.
okay.
But that's a fall question, I guess.
So just for information to council, I want you to explain more of what they're doing when they're refurbishing, if this is a spin or a complete replacement.
Well, yeah, there was some that, we would have them go down and just probe around to make sure that the bottoms were there. If the bottoms weren't there, then they said they could re-bench them, put a piece of pipe in, and then re-cement it, so it did have a bottom. If not, if it was completely rotted out, then it would get on a list to get replaced altogether by Colville or HCL.
Your average cost to replace one manhole, if all goes well, is the same price as refurbishing 4 of these.
Is Colville still on our list of contractors?
Do you want to answer that?
If we're doing work for us?
Yeah.
Yes.
I see he canceled his business license.
Has he been getting back to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we got our list of council business license, and his was on there.
It said that he didn't respond. There's a note on the side note on that, so
Oh, okay.
I guess
Okay. Any other questions on the manholes and the, okay, we can keep moving there, Dan?
The sewer lining program, it went out to tender and it was awarded to In Situ Form from Edmonton. We were in talks of when they could start. They would come in and clean lines, and we have slated to do 52nd Street up to 45th Ave, 45A Ave from 53rd Street to between the houses to the east, and then between the houses of 45A Ave and 45B Ave to get done, and then 47th Ave between 49th Street and 45th Ave.
So I hear some good news about their technology and their grinder system and stuff while they're in the existing line. Stuff that we were trying to break away with water pressure before.
I have a couple video clips later of that to
Yeah,
show you.
excellent. So hopefully everything goes good next to Tony's house. And so the liner itself is a warranty for 50 years, eh?
Lifespan of 50 years, yeah.
That's good. Go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, and the big benefit for us is, I know we talk about between the houses, but what it's meant is there's an easement between 2 homes. And that's where our main sewer line runs through, from the street, between the 2 homes and an easement to another, between 2 homes and then to the next street. So to open excavate that, it's landscaped, it's fenced, it's got everything going on, it's mature yards, right? So being able, number one, to bust away the growth that's happening in the pipes mechanically, because we just can't do it with water pressure like we have. And then to be able to line it, it's just, this is a very affordable way to ensure that we don't have to go in there and disrupt that much.
Yeah, well, the technology is moving in the right direction, and could save municipalities a ton of money, this whole process.
We have also, I talked with Dan at length about phase 2 of Foxview, and he's in there having a look, retelevising he did what he could, but it has to dry up there, so we can televise some more, to take that information, today's time, go to this contractor and say, is this something we can also get rid of this same thing and then line it? Because that would be a benefit for that project for sure. So now that it's drying up, it shouldn't be another week or 2, and we'll be able to get in there and finish that. So I'm hoping to have some good news down the road.
Excellent. Anything on that sewer line? Okay, we can keep moving down.
So that was that for the budgeted items. Jameson has a clip of the robotics that this company came in and did in a month or so ago for us. This company was out of Edmonton, Supreme Vac they're called. So they go in like we do and camera the line to see what they can see, and the first thing that came across was a blockage like that. And if they can't get past, then they send in this robotic grinder, which goes along and grinds out all this calcite as it moves along. Some pieces can take an hour plus to just do, so water was never gonna break it free.
And that is inside an 8-inch pipe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just water.
Infiltration from the joints of like mineralized water, yeah. So that's what it looks like after they're done, their final clean. And then there's this clip, they're just done here, now they're moving forward, and you can already see the next piece that they would come across. And that's just,
Quite the tool.
And we can get in there with our pressure cleaner like most municipalities or almost everyone has with, what are you getting for PSI on the nozzle?
2,500.
And it will not remove that. I don't care how long you beat it back and forth, so this is great new technology that's
This is what these guys do, and they were very, too much excited for my liking of what they were finding, because they hadn't seen stuff this bad before, so. Yeah.
Well, Dale was even telling me that some of the new services that have gone into that sewer line, they're supposed to just come through into the 8-inch pipe, but they were sticking quite a bit ways in. And that grinder grind all those stubs right off that were way too far into our line. Well, and now they can send,
sewer cleaner down.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, because we were having problems, we would get stuck on services that were sticking in, and then, so that company that got the tender to do relining does the same thing, they'll come in and go through these lines, clean them all up, cut services off, and then reline, so it's like new.
Yeah, so my understanding is when they blow the line or push the line in, then they come back and then they cut the services where they were.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Technology.
They tell me they're getting into doing services as well, but I've yet to find somebody that would show me that.
Okay, any more questions of Dan on the budgeted items in Public Works? But you said B and W is still on track to do it,
47.
probably. Yeah,
Yes.
paving and,
Yes.
were we thinking before the fair or?
No, I would think no,
Okay,
but we could probably get it fixed up before the fair, because I know it's pretty potholy, but we were trying to just stay away from it, we don't want to waste material on it, but if
well,
well-traveled route for the fair,
yeah. Well, I know it gets busy in that side of town.
Yep.
I don't know what his schedule is, but to spend money on to fix it up that we're just
Yeah,
gonna rip it out doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, any more questions for Dan? Okay, well, thank you very much. Next up, Tony Tentition.
Good afternoon. So we'll start with my progress report on the capital items that I got. So the first one is the half-ton truck for the roads. That truck has been purchased from Grant Miller already, and we are in the process of putting the accessories on it, which is the box liner, the box rails, the headache rack, beacon, and all that kind of stuff onto the truck. So, and that come in, the cost of the truck was 56,000, so, and we budgeted 65, so we have enough to do all the accessories and stuff that we need to do on it, so.
Excellent.
Next is the compact cylinder for Unit 121, and that one is still, I called them just the other day to see, get an update on it, and they still are telling me it's not gonna be till end of September or October before I receive it, and this was ordered back in the end of January, early February when I ordered it, so. So it's just not taking that long to get it, because it's gotta come from Packmore themselves in Texas is where it comes from, so,
Which is kinda weird. So we've had that cylinder rebuilt before,
yes.
and there's
Well,
just
not that cylinder, other cylinders.
others.
Yes. And the cost of, the last one we had rebuilt was actually more money to rebuild it than it was to purchase the new one I'm gonna get, so. The cost of rebuilding has gone way up on those cylinders. And then next is gravel for the landfill, and that is, I got, Twin Lakes is gonna be hauling it to the landfill for us. So I just talked to him, and he's, now that it's dried up there a little bit, he can get in, so he's hoping to start hauling in the next week, he said, so we'll get that hauled in, and then from that, once he hauls it in, he's gonna stockpile it, and then we'll use our cross dump and our truck, and we'll spread it all on the roads with the cross dump, because with doing it That way, instead of spreading it with an end dump or a truck, it's a lot more smoother and a lot less work for the grader after, so.
Any questions so far? Keep going.
And that's it for that portion, because all the other ones that I had were all completed already, so the
Okay.
last time we come to council. So I'm gonna just go through I got a little bit of progress report, and we'll go through the recycling landfill update. So on June 4th and 5th, ARMA, Alberta Recycling Management Authority, chose Vegreville for one-time only curbside pickup of household hazardous waste and electronics. They collected 750 liters of used oil, 6 cages of acceptable items, which means items that are in the recycling program, like microwaves, TVs, computers, all that. Appliances, like small corded appliances off your counter, all that kind of stuff that is included in. And then we had 3 items that were not acceptable, but we took them anyway, and one was a fridge, a deep freeze, and a barbecue, so. But just, we didn't want to leave them sitting on the lawn, and so they said they had room, so we just loaded them up and hauled them out. I know by talking to residents, they like the curbside, a lot of them mentioned that they didn't know it was even happening. And so, but in that, we didn't even, ARMA themselves did the advertising. They had a very small budget to do it with, so there was a little, I know, an ad in the paper and stuff like that, and on social media, but I don't know how much more to extent they went in on it for themselves, so.
Go ahead, Councillor Ruth.
So, just a comment about that too. I know that people were quite excited to have it. I don't know that it was necessarily clear to people that weren't aware of what ARMA is. I think even though it's fairly explicit about what items were acceptable, people are not used to it. So it's the first time there were a lot of people that were confused about what it exactly was including. So even if maybe next time it'll be more popular because people would be expecting it. So I don't know if it's coming back again.
Unfortunately, ARMA's not bringing it back to us. This is a one-time program that they'd put out. And again, it was not, Jameson's department and myself pulled money out of different places to throw some push notifications on social media to help get more word out. And that's, but we didn't, they come up and said, hey, we're gonna do this for you this year. Here's what we decided a time and when we do it, which is just before our roundup. So when we collect the household hazardous waste, we can store it, and when the roundup comes, like we know about, then we include that product to be disposed of at the same time. So we'll have to talk at budget time. Manager Temptation will get some numbers, what we think it's going to cost us to do, but it would be on our own, not with any help from ARMA. And then next year, ARMA will pick another community, and then next year they'll pick another one. They just kind of do it that way.
You know, I don't know how much more we can do to advertise things, really. I mean, unless we, knock on people's doors or wait for them to get home after work. Because we put it in the scoop, it was on the radio, it was in the paper, it was on all our social media. I mean, I don't know how much more we could do. I don't know if there's anything else that we could do, other than,
He's got the two.
I think it's the wording though, like to assume that everybody understands what curbside pickup means. I mean, of what? So even I'm saying this as somebody who was on the solid waste, I don't even know what we called it, recycling committee. It's a little inside knowledge. It's not necessarily clear to the average citizen. And yes, we do, I think the advertisement was sufficient, and there certainly needs to be some onus on citizens, but people are busy and they're not familiar with it. So expecting them to know, I would be curious to know if this was what they were expecting for a community our size. Like, I don't know if this is a good amount, if this is a poor amount. So if you have an opportunity to give them feedback, I would suggest that clear language is helpful, and there is a way to be able to make it a little bit more accessible to people. Because again, if English wasn't my first language, I would struggle with that. Never mind, I don't know that everybody necessarily knows what that was.
okay, go ahead, Councillor Lemko.
I was fortunate enough to be in attendance with ARMA when they came out, and they expressed our community was well ahead of many other communities in the form of recycling. They noticed the blue bins by Dairy Queen. They noticed the bins in the alleys, and they attributed a lot of the lack of product on the streets is because people have been recycling for quite some time. We have a very good recycle program. According to them, they were very impressed with our VMER facility. They probably wouldn't come here in the near distant future because they have no need to. They figure we are ahead of many communities in the area of recycling. So that's a good kudos to Vegreville, Tony, your department and stuff, as to how our recycling has benefited ourselves and the residents of this community.
Yes, they also mentioned that because of the landfill, we accept it year-round, that has a lot to do with it, so people aren't collecting it. They could take it out there at any time if they feel the need to do so. And they said they contributed that a lot to why the numbers were down for them when they were going around, so. So then on June 15th, we had our 15th annual Household Hazardous Waste Roundup. We had participants complete a survey to enter a draw to win a hand-push leaf collector. And so it's kind of do with recycling. It's no batteries, no nothing. It's all manual labor. So I thought it was a good prize to put out for the recycling, for the waste. So, and so when we get their names to put into the draw, we asked for where they were, like if they're from the town or the county or where they're from. And as you see, we had 130 vehicles came to the roundup. 84% were residents of the town of Vegreville. 9.5% were residents of county member, and 6.5 were from other areas. So from Viking, there was one or two, and from Andrew, there was one or two that come to the roundup. So, and I don't know how we'd ever stop them from coming if we wanted to, because it's just kind of open. They come in and they just do it at the time, so. What I thought that was actually a low percentage for the amount of people that are coming through, so. So the amount of items collected on the roundup, I don't know if you want me to go through all of them, or if you guys, it's like.
Maybe not the weights, just what it was, just read
Yeah,
these
so
parts.
we got paint and spray paint, hazardous materials, pilot electronics, batteries, oil and oil filters, automotive and chemical containers, which is antifreeze and DEF containers and stuff like that. Tires, bulbs, inks, and toners, and propane tanks, metal, glass, and fire extinguishers. So just at the roundup, we got 17,900 pounds of material that was diverted out of the landfill, so.
Good job.
So on to number 3, the recycling report. I just wanted to throw this in here just to show where we're at for the year, how we're from January to June. And I'm not gonna read all the totals because you have that in front of you, so, but just at the we kept out of the landfill at the VMERF itself by stuff going there is 519,541 pounds. So that's in 6 months, that's a fair amount of product that we have kept from ending up in our landfill, so.
Yeah, and that's not concrete, that's not tires.
Yeah, that's not concrete tires or anything, that's just electronics and the wastes and paints and stuff like that, right, so.
And we're seeing the bins, the 3 cubic yard ones, the bottoms are rotten out of them, right?
Yes, and that is, they're getting to the point where I got an influx of them this year. Usually I go through 7, 8 a year, and this year I'm already at, I think, 10, and I got another 10 on a waiting list, but I ordered some new ones because we ran out, because all the bins that we did get from the town of Vermilion when we purchased them, those are all out and gone already, so we have no more of those left. So I usually order 10 a year, so this year I ordered 20 just to suffice me. But when it comes to budget, I'm probably gonna be wanting to increase it to 20 in budget time so I can have more for next year, so.
And just to add to that, in past, we were always budgeting 2025. When we got the Vermilion load of bins, then we dropped it, obviously. And now that we're done with those, they're out in service, now we bring that back up to normal. So it bought us a lot of time, and we're buying them at a very good price from Vermilion.
Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Bullock.
Do we know how much is possible to repair the bottoms of those bins? Like, is it even worth it? Probably not, I'm thinking.
We did it even on the old cost of the bins when they were costing us $1,000, and it was costing us $1,100 at the time to repair it. Because by the time you get the bottoms bent and then cut out, welded in, it's very time consuming, right? And with the price has gone up, because that was probably 4 or 5 years ago when we tried that. So I'm thinking it's gonna be it's more now, so, and at the bin prices at $13.20, it's just not feasible to try to repair them, so.
Okay, I do have a question on the bins in the alleys, Manischewitz and Fishing, is about the drivers are picking up the bins. Do they identify when the lids are bad? Because a lot of residents phone me, and I'll phone you.
Yes.
And then I drive around, I see them that were broken for quite a while. And in my mind, and in council, we've had this conversation, it would be pretty easy if the driver actually just at the end of his shift was to give that to the office. All the ones that the lids are bad on.
They do call me with the addresses where there's lids that are bad and the bins that are rusted out too, right? The problem we had this year is all our bins, most of them are 44-inch bin lids, and they were all on back order, so we had none. So we went for a long time without any. I finally got a whole bunch in, 2 orders in, like 60 of them in total to start to repair them. But I had to wait for them to come in because they didn't have none in stock. So.
3 different sizes.
And there's 3 different sizes of bins, 44s, 51s, and 56s, so.
But routinely, the driver, that's part of his job, that he would report if there's a lid missing on his road.
Yes, he writes it down and gives it in to me, so I got put into my little book I have to keep track of it, so to know when I can go and replace it once and get set to do that, so.
That was one discussion that we were having, so we understand now.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions regarding that? Okay, and what else you got on here?
And just the fleet update. So on June 7th, our apprentice resigned his position. So we are still looking to hire another one. But we had our first ad out and we had only 1 applicant to come in and no experience or no nothing in it, just wasn't suitable for the position. So we are rerunning the ad at this time again to see if we get any more people coming in to apply for it. So we are farming equipment out to other repair businesses in town, because as it is, we are having an extreme amount of large breakdowns, which are very time consuming. So a lot of stuff we are farming out to other businesses to try to keep up, because we're just getting buried in the amount of stuff that is coming in the door at times, right? And it's with 2 of us plus the big repairs, we just can't keep up with it. So we are sending stuff out to other businesses to get fixed. Unfortunately, all of them are busy, so it's usually a 3-week waiting period before I can get that piece of equipment in for somebody else to look at. So it takes a long time, but it's just because we do have such an influx coming in at the present time, especially now that the rain quit and everything's going hard. It's a lot that just keeps coming to the door that we repair outside quickly to get it going again. So, and the big ones kind of get pushed until they can get in and start working on them. So, but
Well, I think we all get it. I mean, every piece of equipment's going pretty hard this year, other than the snow blower.
yes. Exactly. And then parts is still another issue, sourcing parts. Like nobody carries inventory anymore. It's 1 to 3 weeks to get parts all the time. Just doesn't matter really what we order. It's not like it used to be where I could phone and have it on my desk or in the shop the next day. Now it's a week away to 2 to 3 weeks away, so. And that's all I have at the present time.
Any other questions for?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Councillor Wolber.
No really questions to comment. I appreciate the fact that I know it's extra work when we have things like logging where people are coming from, and even though they seem like small numbers, I think in the long run, we like to see that in every department because it's helping us when we are talking with other municipalities as the hub that seems to be carrying a lot of programs throughout the region. So I think it was extra work, well worth it kind of thing.
Yeah, keeping track of where who's using our recycling program, because we don't have any partners. No other municipality contributes, but we seem to have a lot of their residents.
Yes.
And it's nice to be able to go into those conversations with a little ammo.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, I just want to comment on the fleet update that Manager Tim Tischen has just presented. I'm working with Tony as, this isn't something that just happened like yesterday and we're telling you today. I've sat down with Tony, we've had a lot of discussion. Our fleet is aging. It's hard to replace it, just like it's hard to overlay all your roads in town to make it perfect, but we're doing what we can. We're putting together, with all the other managers I've been in touch with, we're putting together a list of our equipment. We're rejigging the priority thing. We would like not to keep getting that one thing per year, and to show what happens when you do that. When equipment just gets beyond, it's beyond. I know we do our best to take equipment that maybe isn't going hard all the time and repair the back end of the backhoe for that 30 grand. Well, it did buy us a few years, no question. Now the front end's giving us the trouble, and when equipment gets to a certain age, as you all know, it spends more time in the shop than it used to spend in the shop. And then it adds more workload onto the same two guys that have been pulling wrenches. It's not about their abilities. They're very good at what they do. But I imagine it gets frustrating for them too when the workload piles up, and gets frustrating for the operators that when the sun shines and it's time to go, the things are breaking down and they're in their shop waiting a week to get on it, if that's the case, or maybe even a few weeks for parts. And then the grass is getting out of hand, and then the manager of that department is getting some heat and he's coming back. It's causing some real negative impact on our relationship with all the departments. So I will be bringing that up in more detail at a future ledge meeting, and then so it's not a surprise to council at budget time where wham, here's what we're thinking. I want you guys to know along the way where we're heading and to get you some good information so we can all make a decision based on that. All right?
Well, with our policy of buying brand new all the time, it can't be done. Maybe we'll have to start talking at budget about start buying some used stuff, because we can't afford the new. And if you're saying that we don't have time to fix what we have, I mean, we know that they're skilled people, but we know what the cost of new is too. And so we'll have to take a real good look at budget time about what our purchases for equipment are going to look like.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Manager Tintition. There was no more questions, was there? Okay, thank you. Up next, Community Engagement Coordinator. I think they got her name spelled wrong. It's Ms. or... No.
Oh, I guess. Okay, thank you. So, since 2019, the town of Vegreville has released an annual report in the hopes of capturing department highlights, functions, and accomplishments of the preceding calendar year in an engaging manner. The annual report also includes an in-depth financial analysis that demonstrates the town's financial position and commitment to ongoing fiscal responsibility and transparency. To minimize printing costs, the 2023 annual report will be published online with the option for residents to request a printed copy by visiting the Town of Vegreville Administration Office. So the options for council are to refer the annual report to the July 15th, 2024 regular council meeting for a council motion to publish, or direct administration to amend the annual report.
Has everybody had a chance to go through it? Is everybody happy with their picture? Well, I thought I'd ask. You're good? Well, everybody seems fairly happy with it.
Great.
So you're gonna have it, you wanna wait to have this, a motion to accept this report on the 15th? Is that what we need? Is that what the recommendation will be?
The recommendation will be the motion to publish it. And then it will live on our website until 2024's is published.
Yeah, well, I went through it. I think it's a good job. Does look really professional.
Thank you.
Well, it looks like he's gonna go through.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And how's everything else going in your department?
Good, great,
How's your boss?
oh, good. Busy,
Yeah,
but good, yeah.
excellent. And your summer's been good up to now?
It's been great, yes.
There you go.
It's been a great summer.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Manager of Protective Services, is he in the building? He's on his way in. So maybe we'll go right to the Community Engagement and Economic Development Manager, Jameson. Thank you, Lane.
We can do that, Your Worship. Bear with me here. Nope, that's the wrong camera, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was painless. We'll see if this one's as painless. So this memo to council is in regards to intermunicipal cost-sharing model for Crossroads Economic Development Alliance 2025 programming.
And I'll be stepping aside.
Mayor McPhee is recusing himself. So with I will continue on with the memo. The background on this matter is that in October of 2023, the town of Vegreville signed a memorandum of understanding with the County of Minburn, the Village of Manville, and the Village of Innisfree to create the Crossroads Economic Development Alliance, or CEDA. This alliance was formally established after a successful $187,000 grant application to the Alberta Communities Partnership. As of 2024, the Crossroads Economic Development Alliance has contracted Outlook Market Research to oversee the development of a regional economic development framework. Outlook Market Research has since hired a regional economic development specialist to complete a business retention and expansion project, which includes ongoing meetings with regional business owners and a business owner-operator survey. This work will continue through the remainder of 2024. To sustain CEDA's efforts into 2025, the County of Minburn successfully applied for the Small Community Opportunity Program grant. This grant will offset most costs associated with a regional economic development communications project intended to strengthen online platforms, update regional agriculture profiles, create a site selection developers package, and promote alliance outcomes. The scope grant, required a $10,000 municipal commitment at the time of application. Through a council resolution, Minburn County Council committed to providing this amount, intending that the three other municipal partners would contribute their portions based on a cost-sharing formula to be determined at a later date. The County of Minburn has since endorsed the Local Government Fiscal Framework, or LGFF, funding model for Crossroads. So the options that will be brought to you on Monday's council meeting are that council agrees to fund the town of Vegreville's portion of the municipal commitment for the scope grant using the LGFF funding model. This would equate to a 32.6% share of the $10,000 commitment, or $3,260. Under this formula, for reference, the County of Minburn's portion would be 47.7%, the Village of Manville's portion would be 12.4%, and the Village of Innisfree's portion would be 7.3%. Option B would be that council proposes an even split of the $10,000 between the four partner municipalities, resulting in a contribution of $2,500 each. Or finally, option C, council elects not to fund any portion of the $10,000, which would likely lead to exclusions from the 2025 Crossroads Economic Development Alliance programming. Any questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
So just so I'm clear, so it's explicit, the county has endorsed the local government fiscal framework, which would be a per capita population-based version, which is the option A that you've suggested.
They have endorsed the LGFF funding model. To me, it didn't make sense that it would be per capita, though, because we would then be the larger contributor. But in this case, under the LGFF, the county's the larger contributor. So this would not be a per capita And those were some of the other options that were discussed between the municipal partners, was a per capita, and as well, there was another funding model proposed, but in both of those, the town of Vegreville would bear the cost, bear the majority of the cost. So I didn't bring those two options to the council, with the county already endorsing LGFF, which would mean they'd be the heavier payer of the four.
Any other questions? Councillor Barry?
Thank you. I'm a little puzzled here. This would mean that option B would be much more expensive to the village of Innisfree and the village of Manville?
Yeah, correct. So the reason...
How do they view it, though?
I honestly couldn't tell you. So each council is going to make the decision as to what they would propose for a funding model. And I wouldn't want to hazard a guess as to whether Innisfree or Manville would be in agreement to the LGFF, or whether they would say, you know, let's go an even split. If I'm a betting man, they say, let's go LGFF. But those options have been brought to you because those were the options that were discussed in terms of what would be the fairest way. And if council says, you know what, I think this should be an even split, then we would bring that back to CETA, and we would let the elected officials discuss that at the platform and try to come to some sort of a resolution.
I would just say that I think the option A would be the fairest to all parties if all parties are going to be part of this, because I can't see a small village paying the same amount as a larger community or county. But I'm just defending the little guy, I guess.
I would tend to agree with you. As mentioned, there were several options bandied about, and these were the three that, you know, potentially would suit the town of Vegreville best. But I would assume that the village of Manville and Innisfree appreciate you looking out for them in this case, because I'd be willing to wager that they're going to be okay with LGFF, and that's probably what they would bring to the table.
Councillor Bullock?
I agree with Councillor Barry. I think A was probably the fairest option moving forward at this point, so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, Councillor Rudick's first.
Sorry, and my previous question, so the part that I'm just a little curious about is what the resolution process is. Just seeing how difficult it's been for the Edmonton Metro Regional Board and the Calgary Municipal Region, CMRB, Metro Regional Board, to make decisions, and even just the voting patterns in those larger bodies has been proportional to their population, and that's still not fair to some of the smaller partners, so they haven't enjoyed that experience wholeheartedly. So I'm just curious, if we're agreeing to this, A is fine with me. I'm surprised that that's what was proposed by the county, but that's fine with me. Does that also equate to that proportion of the decision-making power, or what happens if somebody opts out of this?
Well, we haven't, and we hope not to, cross that bridge. Just so council is aware, my role is somewhat limited in CETA. I take part, I work collaboratively. I obviously do not get a vote, but Mayor McPhee does. And to answer your question about how we come to decisions, it has to be unanimous. All four of the elected officials representing the four municipalities have to agree. The hope would be that we all come to some sort of conclusion and that everybody remains a part of this program. I believe that the county, not to speak on behalf of them, but in having conversations with their administration that's a part of this organization, they probably see a little bit more value out of it because they don't have an economic development person. So perhaps they see they're okay with providing a little bit extra into this pot, knowing that, you know, this is really good for them. While the town of Vegreville, you know, they've got me, hopefully.
So mine was somewhat similar to Councillor Rudick's, just in the fact of I don't have any, I mean, C's not really an option in my mind. Obviously, we want to contribute, so I don't have an issue with A or B. The only thing I was looking at with B is potentially based upon that voting power of, while certainly it impacts them more, but if they have the ability for their vote with less people to be worth exactly the same as our municipality, then maybe that was some of the reason for the four-way split, but I would be okay either way.
Any further questions? Thanks, Jameson. We'll be seeing this brought forward on Monday night, I imagine.
Just so I'm clear, and for Mondays, you're correct, Councillor, Monday's meeting, the recommendation will be that we proceed with option A. That would be the option we're endorsing, and then again, CETA will determine what the other municipalities have come to the table with, and if there's any changes, we'll obviously let you know. But
This could change by Monday.
very well could.
All right, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Jameson. And I see Manager Newton is here. So let's go forward with Protective Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a memo to council in front of you today. The provincial government introduced the Public Security Peace Officer Program in 2007 to provide municipal governments the authority to employ peace officers for community safety enhancement and/or specialized law enforcement purposes. While reviewing the Public Security Peace Officer Program and the Enforcement Services policies and procedures, it was determined that we're not currently in compliance with the program. As part of the program, a policy from each municipality is required for reporting to the Public Security Peace Officer Program and followed. Policies in front of you today, Your Worship, and the options today are that Town Council accepts the joint plan as presented in the draft policy. This draft policy will be presented for adoption for the next council meeting on July 15th. The Town Council proposes a different plan. Administration will make necessary revisions to present and discuss at the next Legislative Committee meeting on August 13, 2024, or the Town Council rejects this plan and presented it in the draft policy.
Okay. Okay, any comments on the policy? Go ahead, Councilor Rudick.
Is this actually changing any of the practice that's currently underway, or it's just actually implementing a policy that will record what is already taking place?
Practices haven't changed through the mayor to Councillor Rudick, but we do have to have the policy to maintain our standards.
Okay, well, if there's any questions before our next council meeting on this, maybe get them to CIO Ling and then get them answered, or at least have the answers for the next council meeting. Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Doesn't look like Director Lefebvre has anything at this point. And let's move right on to Director Saskew.
Thank you, Your Worship. So here I have the variance analysis for the period of January to June of 2024 as compared to the entire year 2023 and the entire 2024 budget. So just to note, in the second attachment you have this summary, and it has the first column 2023 January to June, second column is 2023 for the full year, 2024 January to June, and then this third column is the budget. So there are some variances that are evident, but those are all just because it's only been half a year. So our budget isn't broken down into monthly increments. It's the full year budget, the full year prior year comparable, and then the current year 6 months to date. So I will go through and outline some variances that I noted in preparing this report. So general government is the first one that we have, and this includes general government, administration, and legislative departments. So net municipal taxes are greater than prior year right now, so we have the 11,085,000, and that is due to requisitions yet to be paid. So net municipal taxes is, as it is exactly says, is it's the total taxation revenue less the requisitions we pay. So because we haven't paid some requisitions, our tax revenue is sitting overstated on our books currently. So the table below summarizes payments to date and upcoming to be paid. So paid to date was education and Elk Island separate, so we've had 2 quarterly installments. Those are legislatively required by us to make quarterly installments. And then the other 2 requisitions, I have legislatively, we are required to pay them 30 days, within 30 days of our taxation collection date. So if I was to pay a requisition prior to taxation collection date, we are actually fronting the costs and not earning any interest, or actually maybe even losing some interest earnings on like a grant, that because we have not received payments often until June. So most of our tax payments, other than the ones that are on the tax, like the TIP program, most of our tax payments come in the last 2 weeks of June. So right now we have outstanding Minburn Lodge, which is $221,373, and then DIP machinery and equipment, so that is assessed by a provincial assessor, and that's a small amount, $2,123. So those will be paid within the next 30 days. Government transfers, so if that is the second line item here, you can see we've received $0 to date in current year, and that is the prior year MSI operating grant, and this year is current year LGFF operating grant. So our allocation for 2024 is $101,106. So I will be expecting that in the next couple months. Like normally we receive it before fall. And then just to note that LGFF capital is separate in the capital budget. Our allocation for this year, just to remind everyone, is $944,849. So that you will not see in this budget variance analysis, because this is for operations, not for the capital side of things. In general, all other revenues and expenditures are looking to be on track, with approximately 15% earned or spent in the year to date. So before I move on, is there any specific questions on that one? Feel free to stop me as we go as well. Okay. So then the next separate item on the side is council. So council is comprised of 100% council allocated revenues and expenditures. Everything is looking to be on track with no items to note more than 50% spent to date. The $250 revenue is the county contribution for the family day breakfast. So you guys get a little bit of revenue there. Moving on to the next page, we have community engagement and economic development. This is comprised of communications, economic development, and the visitor information center. So these revenues and expenditures are looking to be on track with no items noted more than 50% spent to date. So nothing to note here that is off track. Community services is comprised of general community services and public health items that are budgeted. So included in this contracted and general services expenditure line includes $18,000 for the chamber copyright agreement and $10,000 for Canada Day fireworks. So that's what that $28,000 is for this year. And then included in transfers to local boards and agencies is $17,000 to Prairie Tales, which is what has been spent to date, $30,776 to Northern Lights Library System, $22,000 to VTSS, as well as public health grants and incentives totaling $15,000. To date, only Prairie Tables has been paid for the allocated funds. VTSS and Northern Lights are also ones that will be for sure paid once we get invoices or them asking for it. Normally VTSS gets paid in the summer. And then the public health grants and incentives is dependent on, I believe we have the physician incentive and retraction committee, depending on new doctors coming and whatnot, there's certain criteria to receive those incentives. So that's all that we got in that one. So FCSS and libraries, so both of these are included in the town's operations, but also tend to be kind of on their own. So this is comprised of all FCSS budgets as combined as one, as well as the library. To date, all of our revenues and expenditures do look to be on track. We, as the town, have less control over these funds and how they're spent, as they are administrated by separate grants and administration over us. So if there is something on these, I can definitely follow up and ask where things are at, but for the most part, they have their allocated budgets, and as long as they stay on track, we don't ask too many questions. Moving on. Protective services. So this I did a little bit differently than the last time. So protective services is comprised of fire, safety, municipal enforcement, and then you can see the next column over is RCMP. So I put RCMP as a separate line item so we can track those expenditures. It was skewing some of the protective services because of the $1 million contract. So protective services is just fire, safety, and municipal enforcement. One notable item is the 2023 total salaries being much higher than current budget and the amount to date. That is due to several fire deployments for wildfire season in 2023. So it was an unprecedented year, and you can also see that in the user fees and sale of goods, like the revenue side of things. So I don't believe we're on track to see that kind of revenue again, but in the end, it became a lot of it was net revenue because there wasn't a lot of excess from that. So materials, goods, supplies, and utilities are more than 50% of budget to date due to timing of replacement purchases and annual repairs. So in the fire and municipal enforcement, they had certain replacement projects and other projects that were to be done, and they've been done so far this year, so that's why they've used more than 50% of their budget. So nothing that was looking off track as per my review today. Moving on to RCMP. So these are funds that are comprised of only the RCMP operations, not the facility costs. The RCMP facility is still included in the facilities that we have here. This is just their operations. So the government transfers of 345, 664 are the annual policing grants that the town has not received to date. So normally this grant gets paid to us in December. This grant is used, it used to be two separate grants, $100,000 police officer grant and a $245,664 policing grant. The intention of the police officer grant was to cover the cost of one member, and this grant has not been adjusted for inflation in recent years. So as you can imagine, the police officer grant portion of this grant is no longer covering the full cost of one police officer. So that's just something to note. That's out of our hands, but it is sad to see the same amount coming in every year. To date, you can see there has only been $155,977 spent on contracted and general services. That is just the Q1 of the 2024-2025 policing contract. So just the way that the quarters are paid, our January payment actually gets put back into 2023 because it's related to like October, November, December of 2023. So that's why on our books, we only have 100,000. Note that is a significant discount due to vacancies of positions and the reporting that our policing has done for us as of recently. So it's nice to see that are finally getting a little bit of a break, but overall, on track for everything else.
Okay, so I got a question here, Director Saskew. When we take the building and the maintenance and take it away from the costing of the policing for the municipality, I don't think it represents what their full cost of the RCMP is.
That's correct.
So
I was thinking that maybe next time I can make a separate and then put RCMP, have their operation cost in there, and then add in the facility cost next door so we can see both of them together as a group.
yeah, because if the public looks just at this, they don't see the full cost of what that policing cost us.
Absolutely.
With the debenture and the maintenance. So, and again, we should show the province's payments. They make quarterly payments for their usage of the building as well, right?
Yes, and that's in the police facility cost. So we have the revenue and the expenditure. So if I put the facility as a separate line item just next to it, you would see the revenue coming in as well. And so you would see the full net cost of the policing facility. I thought of that today too, but it's day 2 back from mat leave and I was not able to rejoin my spreadsheets quite that quickly.
Well, it's no different than when the library shows up and they don't take the cost of what we pay for that facility and all the bills up there. And so that's part of the grant. So if we capture the debenture and the maintenance and the utilities and offset it with what the province gives us, we'll have a true understanding for the public of what policing RCMP is actually costing us.
That's absolutely true. So next time I will put the RCMP, and I'll keep this part separate and then put the facility right next to it, as well as with the library, because I think that's good information for us. RCMP and library separate.
Good information for the public.
Absolutely, yes. And I did note that in my facility that it does include the library and the RCMP building.
Okay, any more questions on either one of these? Okay.
Okay, so the next that we have is Recreation, Parks, and Culture. So this is comprised of all budgets relating to recreation, including the arena and the swimming pool operations. So government transfers here include $309,500. That's the Minburn Recreation Grant. That has not been received to date. As noted, Minburn normally pays within the next several months. We don't normally get that in December. We normally get it throughout the summer. And the remainder of the funds budgeted between the 309 and the 324 is the Canada Summer Jobs Grant. So once again, that grant we receive, it's a completion grant. So once our summer students complete their employment and we submit the required reporting, we get the payment after the fact. And we know that that is going to be a lot less than what was budgeted because our grant for Canada Summer Jobs was cut in more than half this year. So that is what we have there. And then for Recreation, Parks, and Culture, expenditures look to be on track. No line items in excess of 50% total budget to date. So I really didn't see anything that was off.
Okay, so our understanding as council is that you're back full-time from your mat leave now?
Yes, as of yesterday.
Okay, so could we expect at some time, maybe in the fourth quarter, that we could take a look at some numbers of what happened at rec department and wages and those overages that we've seen, and we could get that by the fourth quarter? Is that too much to ask?
Nope, that is appropriate. That is on my summer list of things to do.
Okay, because we all want to know how that happened and how we're dealing with it, so.
And as you can see, like the salaries and wages and everything is half of budget right now, so that is all, has been mitigated. For sure, there was some coding problems that.
Yeah, and we understand that somehow it all couldn't have been overtime.
No.
But something got out of whack there, and we'd just like to, understand how that happened.
And when that was identified, when that was early spring for us, I did rectify the problems for 2024. So as you can see for Recs, Park, and Culture and facilities, both of those are about half of their budget for wages, and so that has all been rectified, those amounts there. So I will definitely have an answer, and I can show you, even if it is like this was coded in this spot and should have been there, council does deserve to know exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, because we were sort of upset for sure, and we didn't understand what happened, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so facilities, same thing. This is comprised of the budget for all town-owned facilities, including RCMP detachment and the library. Expenditures look to be on track with no line items in excess of 50% total budget to date. So I didn't see anything there that really jumped out at me. Public Works. So this is comprised of the budget for roads, municipal properties, airport, and cemetery. Revenues and expenditures look to also be on track here with no items in excess of 50% total budget. So that looks all to be fine. Same thing with utilities. It's comprised of the budget of water and sanitary sewer. You will note in the contracted and general services, it's at 59% of budget to date. So this is due to the sewer lift pump repairs and replacements in the year that were included in the budget. So those are kind of just a front-loaded expense. We've done those repairs already. They were budgeted at $40,000, so that ate up quite a bit of the budget, but those are done and no further repairs are needed that we know of. And then the remainder of the revenues look to be on track. Municipal services, so this is comprised of fleet, waste collection, landfill, and recycling. So revenues and expenditures look to be on track, no line items in excess of 50% total budget to date. So That is good. And as I know, like, I feel like some of this stuff is being very brief, but now with our managers coming in and doing the update on their projects and whatnot, I hope that council is well informed on what those individual projects are looking like. And so long as there's nothing that's really sticking out on the variance analysis, I'm letting the managers explain their projects, and then this is just the overall variance analysis. Like, as the accountant, do things look right to me? Planning and development, so this is comprised of the budget for planning and development. Revenues, expenditures look to be on track, and no line items in excess of 50% total budget. So you can see 2023, there was $2.5 million line. That was Prosperity Park, and that was the capital that ended up as the year-to-date expenditure. So capital, as noted, is not in our operating budget, so there would be a budget of $0, but at the end of the year, we put the capital revenue and expenditure in the financials. So that's why you'll see the 2.5 there, but then 0 budget for this year, because there is some expenditures for Prosperity, but they won't be in the operating budget. So the revenue and expense will net to 0. And that is all I've got. Is there any questions, anything that jumped out at you?
So basically, halfway through the year, there's really only 2 line items that were over,
Yeah.
that were just where we're proceeding with some projects. So the variances look okay. Any questions? Go ahead, Councilor Rowland.
Just double checking within the departments, when we look at like the cost in a department or building on the utilities to that building, do we put that into, like, our utilities section is not utilities, like as in payments overall, right? It's the department.
It's the department. So there's utilities, like in the facility expense, every single facility has a utility line, and the budget to actual goes through all of that. So the utility in the facilities line would be under contracted and general services, it'd be included in that line. Yeah.
And the reason I asked, I know I had asked previously, back and forth, you and I had a discussion on like a side item about items like the carbon tax, for example.
A climate mitigation?
No, it is just on the actual tax paid, and some municipalities are separating them out and certain ones some aren't, but it was kind of interesting what had come back from Lloyd Minister, because they actually had separated out specifically just in their department that provided water, wastewater, and utility service related to that, and they had actually tracked a $600,000 cost. Now, of course, Lloyd Minister is larger, but that is interesting when going back on the budget, because that's a no fault to department type of increase. So all of a sudden, $600,000 more, and if that department, for example, or paid $600,000 just in that, and that department a few years ago had, maybe not hardly gone up, in essence, they're actually saving money because that new cost is there. So it is just a little bit interesting, because I think sometimes that cost goes through so many different spots that we don't necessarily track it. So that's the only reason why I was asking whether it was by department or by, okay, thank you, that makes sense.
And like, we could start tracking it. It would take like 2 years before we would get good data right now. So if we started today in 2024, I could make all these new carbon tax lines, and we could start entering them in through our payables department. And then at the end of this year, we would have probably a half-year detail, and then it would be at the end of 2025 that we'd have like a full-year cost of what the carbon tax looks like. So if that is the wish of council, we could do that. It would be a bit of a project, but.
You know what, we can talk about that at budget time, and we're hoping that, probably by the next year's budget that we'll be, how do you say, axe the tax? Is that how you say it? I don't know, but, I know other municipalities, like the county of Strathcona, looked at just what the increases this year in the carbon pricing was gonna cost them, and it was staggering across the board. But it's hard to pick up the intangibles too, because everything that Dale's department buys, even when CAO Ling orders stuff for her department, if somebody's bringing it here, there's carbon tax on it that we never get the chance to capture, just on what we see on our own bills, like public works and fuel, and then facilities and gas and electric. But, we can talk about it. If you think we can change the federal thinking.
I don't think it really, it's an interesting spot, because sometimes I know it's hard when we'll say to departments, you need to say curb spending, but some things are, there's places they can find savings, some there isn't. And I also think the reality is whether the tax is to continue or not, the tax may go away, but I think it's common sense for us to say that we know in general when things have gone up overall, not a tax line, but the cost of bringing something in, it's very rarely, even if they see a reduction in some costs, that all of a sudden they'll bring the price back down. So I don't think that we're automatically going to see a pipe, say, become cheaper because that tax goes away, because we know that departments, now that they've sold it to you for X number of years, are going to keep charging that price. So, I mean, I think it'll ever be hard to see us bring that portion down. So I guess it's just something for us to watch, but I do try and keep it in mind when I'm looking at the departments, because some of those costs that are rising are not necessarily due to inefficiencies, they're due to out of control items.
Just any energy cost whatsoever, I mean, for facilities and public works, I mean, they get probably hammered with a 3% costing on their daily operations just on that tax alone.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay, well, we can talk about it if people are serious about it, and maybe Director Saskew can build a program to break it out, but we can talk about it at budget time.
Absolutely.
Is there any more questions for Director Saskew on this report? Wow. Well, we appreciate the update, that's for sure. And thank you very much. We'll move on to CAO Ling and the mass repeal bylaw.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. Okay, this is the draft mass repeal bylaw that we spoke about the last ledge meeting. So at the June 18, 2024 Legislative Committee meeting, administration introduced the draft mass repeal bylaw to council. Consensus of council opted to view and discuss, excuse me, the draft bylaw at the next Legislative Committee meeting today, July 9th. As noted previously, the MGA Section 63A allows council to pass a bylaw for the repeal of bylaws that are now considered inoperative, obsolete, expired, spent, or otherwise ineffective. Schedule A of the draft bylaw lists a total of 101 bylaws that may be repealed by town council. Administration has provided digital copies of all 101 bylaws listed under Schedule A for council's review in preparation for discussion. The communication strategy will be, if passed, legislative services will update the bylaw index to reflect all repealed and active bylaws. And so the options today are to discuss the draft bylaw and complete, discuss the draft bylaw today and then complete all 3 readings for the bylaw at the next council meeting held on July 15th, or propose revisions to Schedule A before moving forward with all 3 readings.
Okay, thank you. Leslie, have you got any feedback from council on any of these bylaws that we want to repeal? Councilor Bullock, you have one?
Bylaw 181-B, 2-hour parking on certain highways. Is that covered in any other bylaw that we have currently?
It might be in our traffic bylaw. I would have to double
Can't find
check,
anything in there
so
about
it's not
that,
in-
so.
Okay.
Because it refers to, you know, some of the businesses, and there's, I know certain streets and stuff like that, there is a concern with parking for over 2 hours in front of some businesses. And I know from certain tenants may park all day long from upstairs residences in front of businesses on Main Street, for instance. So there's still a 2-hour parking. There's a concern there if someone's parking whole day in front of a business.
I do know we've talked about, municipal enforcement has talked about doing a parking kind of a education piece, more so warnings first of all, instead of dealing with parking tickets right away. And I'm pretty sure the bylaw that they were referring to was not bylaw 101. So, so we will, I'll do some digging into that, and I will have an answer for you on Monday as to which bylaw that sits in.
Yep.
Well, there's one sign in town that says that.
And that's on 16A, is it not?
No, it's just from the TD Bank going to
Oh, going
bowling alley.
towards the bowling alley.
They have them posted there, 2-hour parking.
Okay,
It's the only place in town that has it.
okay, we will do some digging to see where it is referenced now, because I'm pretty sure, I would like to think we're not going back to a bylaw from
It would,
like the 50s,
I can't find it.
but, yeah, we'll take a look. Okay,
I know at one time, there used to be those signs posted around town, but they're no longer posted other than on that avenue. Okay, so you'll have some answers for Monday and hopefully,
yes, well, I'll get some answers for council for this on Monday, and if then council can make the decision at the time to either leave this bylaw in the Schedule A, or we can pull it.
okay, everybody's good with that? Okay, excellent. You still got one more here, CAO Ling.
Yeah, then the next item up is the Regional Recreation Feasibility Study Steering Committee. So administration has started the initial steps for the Regional Recreation Feasibility Study. Orange Crow leadership has been awarded the project through Alberta Community Partnership funding. Next, according to the ACP grant application, the town will need to establish a steering committee to guide the project. As the managing partner, the town of Vegreville can decide the size of the committee, how many members should represent the town of Vegreville, how many members should represent the regional partners, and if council would like any additional members on the steering committee. So administration is bringing this forward for council's direction for the composition of the steering committee. All costs for this project will be covered by ACP funding. And once the composition of the steering committee is determined, administration will advise the regional partners and set a meeting schedule. Administration will draft a terms of reference that will establish responsibilities for each member to be presented and discussed at the first RRFS steering committee meeting. So the options today are to advise administration as to which town council members will participate in the steering committee and how many additional members would be involved in the RRFS steering committee, or direct administration to draft proposals for the composition of the steering committee.
Any thoughts? Go ahead, Councilor Rudick.
Would this be similar to, the regional economic development one that we heard earlier from Manager Brown in terms of having representation from staff but no voting power on these?
The way the grant is written, we have allowed space in the committee for staff representation. That's for two reasons. One, to have a minute taker and to have recordings of the meetings. And secondly, it's going to be staff that has, or administration that has the history and background. The voting members will be, the municipalities that passed a motion to join the Regional Recreation Feasibility Study, and those motions were sent in to the ACP with the ACP application, they are voting members. Because we are the managing partner, we can also decide whether or not, let's say, okay, so the County of Minburn will be a voting member because they wrote in a letter. Let's say the County of Two Hills or the Town of Two Hills wants to be involved because they know we share recreation and that their citizens come here. Council has the ability to make them a voting member if you so wish. And I'm just using them as an example.
So like the County of Lamont, the Town of Mundare, County of Two Hills, the Town of Two Hills.
Currently, right now, we had 3 motions passed and sent in with our ACP application. It is the County of Minburn, the Town of Mundare, and the Village of Holden.
Well, I think we should get a hold of the County of Lamont, County of Two Hills,
And we
the County of Beaver.
We reached out to all of them, and some of it, the timing was just off for when they met, because some of them only have monthly council meetings, so they couldn't get the motion passed in time. So we'll be reaching out to all of them. Our plans were to reach out to all of them to see if they wanted to put anybody on the committee, if council so wished that we had all our neighbors sitting on the committee. And then it would be up to council to decide if they're voting members.
Well, we all know their citizens will be using it, and we might as well get them, yeah, you know, in the game. So, like, do you guys feel that we should have at least to start is one member of each council of these other communities, stakeholders, we'll say, because their input on the money side is going to be important. I mean, because we all know that they just can't expect the taxpayers of Vegreville to pay every dime for their citizens to enjoy the recreation. So is there any, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate that explanation, and I definitely think the invitation should be extended to all potential and current users. The one question I do have is that when we start tallying that up as a managing partner, do we have more voting power, or is it one for one?
It depends how many members you want to put on the committee. That's the other thing, because if each member has a vote and you have 8 surrounding, I'm just throwing numbers out here. If you have 8 surrounding communities, technically you're outvoted.
So, yeah. So that would be a question that I think is probably important for us to think about how we want to do this, because representation is important for getting good information, both coming and going from the committee. But ultimately, as the managing partner, I think there needs to be some mechanism to be able to enforce our decision-making as a municipality. I wonder too, if we wanted, you've put it on here as having additional members. I think having some stakeholder groups as part of the conversation would be helpful. Challenge is who it is and how they're tied into the information, because
Well, and part of the scope of Orange Crow leadership is they will be engaging with user groups.
excellent.
So they will be doing the groundwork to find out what they want, what they need, like what their Christmas wish list is, right down to this is the bare minimum that we can accept. You may want them at the table, you may not want them at the table.
Well, since we're on the ground floor to say, we're just starting this, let's send out the invitations and see who wants to play ball.
You're talking to the surrounding municipalities,
And then
yes.
once we get an answer from them, I mean, if we had 3 members, I mean, really, if we're all like deciding how it's gonna get paid for, and there's 8 of them and 3 council members, and they're like, well, you guys pay for it. Of course, you know, we'd have to do something about it. But I'd like to see how much interest there is from the county of Lamont.
Yep.
Knowing full well, I mean, if the county's gonna stick their head in the sand and try to pretend that the residents are not gonna benefit from this, and they don't respond to our letter, or they don't put somebody on the council, and then we'll just, I don't know, we'll go to the radio and we'll newspaper, and we'll just call them a bunch of losers or something, you know, it'll be fine.
Okay, on that.
But seriously,
On that.
because if there's no interest from these other municipalities who their citizens use our facilities and a new facility, I mean, just how many of them come to school in Vegreville?
And that's also, Orange Crow will be taking a look at our data that we collect when people come to we'll use the pool, for example, when they come for a swim, where they're from. But the other thing is they'll be talking with their regional groups, like their minor hockeys, their soccer groups and everything. So they'll get an idea as to where people participate in their recreation.
Oh, go ahead, Councilor Lemko.
Yeah, Your Worship, just reading the questions on the, the table here for the options was discussed that we advise administration of which councils will be sitting on this committee. I'd like to go to option 2. It's like to direct administration to draft a proposal of the composition of the steering committee, gather all the information that you have from Orange Crow and all that, and then bring it back to council here and have a meeting outside of this council meeting, a workshop or something to go over the details, and then we can make a more informed decision. But bantering around today about our thoughts is probably premature, in my opinion.
Hard to decide.
Okay, go ahead.
I would agree. I think the thing that I would need to know before directing composition would be if any of these other partners are interested, because that will certainly direct. I mean, the reality is we will have to have some, directive ability on this council. And I think that the important outreach to maybe some of the counties, like I'm thinking in lines of, say, County of Lamont, for example, just as a made-up one, is being able to let them know that this isn't an automatic you're in, but you need to be there to even direct us how they intend to address their recreation. Because in their mind, they may very much be a case of where they're saying, well, we are going to provide recreation grants to the municipality within our area. So in that case, they might say to Mundare, and this amount surrounding is considered Mundare, and they give recreation per capita based on that to the town. In the case like that, if that's their only intention, then the person who needs to be on that committee with us as a voting member would be the town of Mundare that's bringing it and the town's up. So I still think we need to ask them to come in to at least be part of how do they intend to address their recreation. Now, if they don't look at it that way and they're willing to say, we are looking at our county people that are outside of the town of Mundare, and that per capita recreation could go towards someone, that's a different conversation. We just don't know how they're willing to do it. So maybe we can see that, and I would agree with Councillor Lemko that then we will put some direction. But I think also we know at the end of the day, this committee is supposed to give us some put forward, but we can have 20 voting members. If they're not going to put any money in, there won't be something going ahead. And it won't be going ahead with anyone's vision but ours.
Go ahead, Councilor Curtis.
Thank you. From some of the other studies that we got back, I would assume that, was there any of those that had this grant as part of it? Because they would have had to set up a committee as well. Maybe some research into how some of the other ones have been set up would give us a bit of direction on what we want to do as well.
We had a steering committee in a terms of reference for the Regional Recreation Master Plan. That was done 5 years ago now. It's almost 5 years. So we've pulled those terms of reference, and we've taken a look at that and the setup of the committee. That one was a little bit different because it was there was only 3 partners involved with that one, so there was more. We had more rigid guidelines to work within when setting up the committee.
More rigid than we have now?
Yes, because it was a partnership, so the 3 municipalities that sent in motions were the only 3 involved. There wasn't any other, we weren't able to bring in, for example, Beaver or anything like that, because it was strictly on the facilities and the recreation offered within our boundaries.
I was thinking if other groups have done this with this grant funding and had to set up these councils, if we had some background on that, it might be beneficial because it is different setup.
And Orange Crow has sent us copies of different terms of reference that they have used for, or that they have run across in other steering committees that they've worked with. So we have lots to draw from.
Okay, so everybody's good with option 2. Wait on that and get some more information. And I mean, just sending out a letter to these other municipalities that we know their residents, you're using our facilities now and probably will be using a new facility that was built, and see what their interest is in participating in the conversation. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next up is mine. So, we are talking about the museum deassessing, yeah. So the amendment is that the update is today. So the changes are going to be advertised on the town social media website, radio, newspaper, running 1 week prior, asking families to contact the town in a specific manner. So I guess, have we passed this already?
Yes, Your Worship. We have a directive that we provided, and what the deaccessioning committee, what we're looking at right now is we need to start expediting what we're doing a little faster than what it is laid out. If we follow through the various phases, one phase at a time, we're not going to reach the auction until September. So what we look at right now is particularly on the advertising to the local people who may have an ancestor and they can describe an item that is historical value to their family. Many of them are aware of that already. And to advertise for 2 weeks and then give another 2 weeks to look at what items they might pick up is extending things by a month right there. And so what we're looking at is if we advertise for just 1 week and give 1 week for pickup, the museums that we've been advertising to, we only give them 1 week basically to pick up their items. Some of the larger items, heavy items, they are picking them up. I was out there today with a number of them. Some are coming tomorrow, some are coming Thursday, to just pick up heavy items that they didn't. Otherwise, they were taking the items the day that they were here. So I think that we can expedite this a little bit, and we'll have a further discussion on how we can expedite some other things moving forward, because I don't think it's wise for us to expand this out until September.
Okay.
So
we have a list. We have a list already of people that have identified some objects.
There are individuals who have identified some things to us already, and we can address those. We have addressed some already when they're saying, could our items be sent to another museum? We've already arranged that and accomplished that in many cases. A number of items that they may well request are probably remaining in town because the Ag Society is accepting quite a few things. A lot of things have gone to the provincial museums, to archives, and to the surrounding museums around here. So some of the items may not be available for return to individuals. And this is a step that normally doesn't occur during deaccessioning, because by law, items that have been donated cannot be returned to the donors or their heirs. But we have the ability to take a look at this a little bit closer if there is a very good reason for the item. If it can be shown that there is a historical value to the heirs, then we can give consideration to it if it's still at the museum.
And when are we going to start this advertising?
It has already started on social media, and we've already been getting contacts all day today, and it'll be in the paper tomorrow. So in addition to those items that have already been requested or talked about for the past 2 weeks, we are getting a number of particular where they say they can identify the item that is of value to the family. And if it's still there, then we're now at a point where we have had well over 20 different museums come in and remove items to museums surrounding us and to the provincial archives, to the provincial museums, to Reynolds Museum. So a lot of items, I would say probably 50% have already been moved to transferred to other museums. But if we can put something back to a family that has heritage to that family, we'll consider it.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just carry on with that. Okay, at this time, due to we have to go to closed session, we have some, a person that we need to talk to who's been waiting to get in. So at this time, I would like to entertain a motion to go into closed session. Okay, Councilor Riddick makes the motion. All those in favor? That motion was at 4:34. Carried.